Good morning, everybody. It's early. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning here, so I'm getting my motorcycle out. Karl's coming over around 7, and today we're going to pack up and we're heading south into the United States. We're going to end up in New Hampshire at Mount Washington, hopefully within the next couple days. But right now, I just got to get ready to go. It's looking like it might rain today, and the forecast says we might get thunderstorms along the way, so I'm just getting everything ready. So sit back, grab yourself something cold to drink, and enjoy Dino's Tinker Shed. I gotta get everything ready here. Anyway, I'll see you in a few minutes.
The first leg of our journey took us through beautiful New York State with its rolling green hills and blue skies, well, at least for the most part. We were under a little bit of cloud cover every now and then, but for the most part, those clouds were behind us to the west as we headed east to Vermont. The overall trip length to get to Bennington is about 560 kilometers, and it took us about 7.5 hours as we just sort of tooted along here at about 80 to 85 kilometers an hour on the DRs. New York State is a great place to ride, and if you have a chance to get to the United States to do some riding or just general travel, I highly suggest it. I'm quite fortunate in the fact that my wife is American, so I get to come over and visit with my in-laws and travel some of the areas around New York State. But this was the first time that I had ever headed east to Vermont, and I have to tell you, New York State is beautiful to ride through. You get to ride around, in this case, we round around the Finger Lakes area, which for me reminds me a lot of Niagara-on-the-Lake. It's a lot of small towns, and small town America is a lot of fun because they really do appreciate their history. They maintain it very well, both formally and informally in terms of all of their homes and their downtown areas. Most of the old downtowns are really old buildings, some of them dating back to the 17 and 1800s. And they sort of modernize some of it, but keep that flavor of the old town. And it's really fun to ride through if you like old architecture like I do. My house is 100 years old, which is nothing compared to some of the houses around here, but all the old wood clapboarding and the big front lawns is just something beautiful for me to watch. Like, this is great right here. I just love these old formal houses. It's a really fun place to ride through. The big blue open skies led to some fantastic views as we were traveling through the eastern part of New York State. We got a few bugs on the lens, but honestly, it wasn't much of a problem because as we closed in on Vermont, well, the skies opened up. At first it wasn't too bad. We didn't bother to stop and put the waterproof liners in our pants, and we probably should have, because not soon after, an absolute deluge of water came down on us. I mean, it rained unbelievably hard. We got soaked all the way anywhere water could get in, and for me that was, I had every air vent open on my coat, I had the cuffs open, I even had my neck opened up. So the coat itself wasn't bad, but it found its way in, I'll tell you that much. However, it did stop, and as we made the right turn heading to Vermont, you could start to see the mountains up in the distance there. And it was something really interesting to see, because I don't think I've been through too many areas with mountains this nice. The rain held off and our coats and our clothing started to dry out. And I was really happy to know that we weren't too far away from the hotel, because we were still a little bit damp and getting a little bit tired. So as the clouds moved off to the north, we got close to our hotel in Bennington, Vermont.
Almost.
Almost.
Oh well, at least we had a little bit of time to dry out, right?
Hey, it could be cold.
It could be cold. Like, I've snowmobiled in rain like that.
Karl and I spent 3 nights at the Paradise Inn in Bennington, Vermont. Now, this is a really nice place to stay. The rooms are clean and spacious with lots of room for 2 guys like us. And it's within walking distance of lots of restaurants. In fact, here we just picked a couple pizzas up and then sat out on the porch and overlooked the property. It has a lot of things if you want to get involved in, like pickleball or shuffleboard. And of course, it even has a swimming pool. So it's a great place to stay if you're ever in Bennington.
Well, it's day 2 here. We're in
Bennington, Vermont.
Bennington, Vermont. And we're going to be heading up to Gorham today, which is about a 4-hour ride to ride up Mount Washington. So the weather looks good. I think it's going to be a great ride, but first we got to get some breakfast. Where are we going?
Blue Benn.
Blue Benn. All right, let's go get some breakfast.
Karl's been to Vermont a few times, and he likes to stop here at the Blue Benn restaurant. Now, the Blue Benn is a converted streetcar, and this is exactly what I love about the United States, is they do stuff like this. It's a little bit cramped inside for a big guy like me, but the food was great. And afterwards, we stopped at a gas station that actually had an old Chevy front clip mounted over the pumps. It was so cool. With a full tank of gas, we pointed ourselves northeast and we headed towards New Hampshire. Now, this was really the first day that I really rode in Vermont, and I have to tell you, the roads and the scenery here are unbelievable to ride. And the DR is a perfect bike for this because you lumber along around 50 miles an hour. It's perfect. The mountain ranges got higher and higher. And at one point we went from about 300 feet above sea level to here we're around 2,200 feet above sea level. And a little bit of construction on the road surface is going on, which of course on a DR isn't a problem. It's actually kind of fun. As we got closer to New Hampshire, the mountain ranges got higher and higher, some of them close to 4,000 feet. And the little towns, again, are just fantastic to drive through. They're just so scenic. And, oh yes, Eric, that is a 4-door Ford Bronco. And we got to a point where we knew we were close to Mount Washington. So, as the road sort of closed in around us, we prepared for a ride up Mount Washington.
Karl and I are just at the base of the hill here, or the base of the mountain, I guess. So it's $25 American to take the mountain road up to the top. So he's just in using the washroom, and then we're going to head up. I'll try to get you the best shots that I can. I think we can stop part way up and see how that works. So let's do that and see what we can do. It's absolutely beautiful here. People are super friendly too. I like it. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the road. You going first? You want me to?
Located in New Hampshire and part of the presidential range of the White Mountains, Mount Washington's summit sits at 6,288 feet above sea level, which is the highest point east of the Mississippi and is an incredibly prominent part of the mountain range.
We started here at 1,582 feet. It goes up from here.
At the top of the mountain, there is a weather station, and in 1934, it actually recorded the highest ever wind speeds in the world at 231 miles an hour or 372 kilometers an hour, and this stood until 1996, and it is still the highest wind speed not associated with a hurricane or a tornado.
You can absolutely smell the brake lining as people are coming down the hill. It's crazy.
As you climb up the side of the mountain here on this road, you're actually going to pass through 4 distinct ecozones. Now, near the base where we're riding here, this is what's known as a northern hardwoods forest. So it has things like birch and poplar, sugar maple, oak, things like that. And this is what a lot of the area around New Hampshire is like. And it's beautiful. There's lots of deciduous shade trees. It sort of arches over top of the road and forms this beautiful, beautiful tunnel. As you get higher, you are going to pass into what's known as a spruce fir forest. And it completely changes from this deciduous hardwood type feel to more conifers, and then ultimately exclusively conifer trees as you pass up the mountainside. Now this is pretty typical. You actually will see this type of transition if you're riding in northern Ontario. So you get up near Hearst, you're going to see that it's mostly what they call boreal forest, which is black spruce, things like that. In the higher elevations, the conifers do better than the hardwoods. And you can see that here. As you pass by, you're going to see these little parking lots as well as you're heading up. And what these are for is, again, to cool your brakes on the way down. And as you climb higher, the scenery just gets better and better. I can't say how beautiful it is to go up here. The third level that you're going to pass through is what's called the subalpine zone. And we're going to see that in a few minutes, and that is where the trees actually start to get stunted and the views get much, much better. The trees you'll see, they start to get a little bit smaller as you get up, and look at the mountains in behind Karl there. I mean, it is just really, really nice to ride through. Ultimately, when we get to the summit, we're going to pass the tree line at about 4,400 feet and enter into what's known as the alpine zone, where it's basically all small alpine plants. The halfway point is right about here.
Pretty cool. Gets better.
Karl could not have been more correct about the getting better statement. Below the subalpine zone, you sort of feel protected because you're surrounded by trees, but once you pass into that third zone, everything starts to get really small. Look at how small the trees are here, and you actually start to feel a little bit vulnerable on the side of the hill here. You're going to see as we ride up here, I crowd the center line quite a bit because of the pucker factor. And remember, I've got my Insta360 mounted about 3 feet above the bars here to try and peek over the edge. From my position, this looks like a sheer cliff, and it is really steep on the other side there. So I end up riding in the middle of the road quite a bit. I couldn't even help it, and I knew I was doing it. I could not help it to ride up like this. But as you get further and further up this mountain, the views are absolutely spectacular. The view switches from left to right because you basically, as you go up, you're using switchbacks to climb in elevation. And in some cases, I think you actually go across a mountain pass. So you end up either on the east or west side of the mountain, depending on where the road is, obviously. And you can see here, these switchbacks are pretty tight, but they reward the rider with a panoramic view of all of the surrounding mountains. But I'm going to be honest, on my way up, I was focused on one thing, the road, and mostly that yellow line. Because the ditches are so steep on the right hand side here, you kind of want to ride in the center. It just seems to be instinctive. Now here we're actually approaching up into the fourth ecozone, which is the alpine zone. This area really has a lot of moisture because it's on a mountain, but because it's above 4,400 feet, no trees really grow, so most of the plants are very stunted. As you get right to the top of the mountain, you're going to get into true alpine plants, and there's some here that are very much endangered, and in fact, robin cinquefoil is found nowhere else on Earth other than on the top of Mount Washington. So although there's lots of places to pull over and walk and cool your brakes, of course, they do ask you not to actually get out and walk around on the soil in these areas because they are very sensitive to foot traffic. Some of these plants are tens and some maybe hundreds of years old because of the slow growth rate. Again, as you climb higher and higher, the views just get better and better. It is like a painting or like a video game almost, the way that the scenery is here. And I actually enjoyed it more watching the video here than actually riding it, because like I said, you're paying attention very closely to the road ahead of you. I basically rode up here in first and second gear. It has a speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and we did catch up with a couple vehicles. Some pulled over to let us go through, but some of them, like this white one, we ended up following closely behind. And occasionally I'd drop all the way down into first gear like this hairpin, and I actually missed a couple shifts, which, believe it or not, is heart-wrenching when you're going up this hill. It never looks as steep as it really is when you're videotaping stuff, but believe me, it's steep. And how you can tell this is the fact that you can actually see Karl in behind me because my bike is on such an angle. It's just crazy. Up near the top here, you can really see this alpine zone. And as we come up, it feels much flatter in this area. There's a lot of places to pull over here, and you can stop and just get some absolutely outstanding photos and video of your experience. And that's really the best way to see this. It's, like I say, hard to sort of look around as you're riding, so you just pull over and take a look around and enjoy the scenery. What was the most interesting thing for me is the fact that when we got close to the summit, we actually started riding up into clouds. I couldn't believe it. It felt like it was going to rain, but in reality, you're just riding into the fog bank here. And as we rounded this last hairpin, you could actually see the weather station that's set up on top of Mount Washington here. So we're getting into the sort of the final stages here, and I actually felt pretty comfortable. You can look around, there's lots of room, you feel very safe, and you start to relax thinking, you know what, I made it to the summit. But Mount Washington's a funny place, and they kept the absolute steepest cliff right up until the last point. And this one really had my pucker factor going here. You can see just how steep the drop off is, and as we ride up here, you'll see there's almost no shoulder in some spots. The cars coming down are pushing you to the right, and you're just trying to stay on track and stay focused. It really is kind of an interesting part of the ride. Now, if you've made it this far, the last thing you have to do is park your car. And everybody here decided just to stop on this super steep part of the hill. There's a few parking spots up here. All of them have great views. So after converging with Karl here, we decided we'd head to the left. But look at the view. It is just absolutely epic. Karl and I spent about 45 minutes on the top of the mountain, but knowing that we had about a 4.5-hour ride back to Bennington, Vermont, we decided we should probably head out sooner than later. So we got back on the DRs and pointed them down the hill, and I'll tell you, you're really close to the cliff edge on the way down. I hugged that yellow line quite a bit on this first section of the downhill, but Karl didn't seem to mind. He just is a better rider than me. Now, if you don't really want to ride up here or drive your car, you can take a cog railway. The cog railway runs 365 days a year, and during the summer months it'll take you all the way up to the summit, a trip that takes about 3 hours round trip. As you travel down, you're gonna see these signs to cool your brakes at the rest stations. Now the DR's perfect. I just put it in first gear and I never really had to touch the brakes. So Karl and I just coasted all the way down. It took about 20 minutes and we really enjoyed the views on the way down. It's a little easier to look around, and soon enough we were back at the bottom of the hill.
This is probably a good place to stop this part of the video. Karl and myself put on over 2,100 kilometers in 4 days. It was a fairly intense riding schedule. And although Mount Washington was absolutely the highlight of the trip and really the reason that we went, the following day we had a great time down in Massachusetts, and I want to share that ride with you as well. So I think I'll do that in a second video. Now, overall, the DRs both ran very well. They handled the highway sections just fine, and the back twisty sections was really fun on these bikes. And you can see why they say they are a true dual sport bike, 50-50 mix. They ran really good in both scenarios. And we even got some back road riding in through the mountains around Vermont. And I'll tell you, they're perfect bikes for that. Gravel roads and mountains are pretty fun on these things. The ProCycle Jet Kit worked really good. I've had a few questions about that in terms of how it changed the fuel economy. Overall, I didn't really notice much difference. I'm still using about 5 liters for every 100 kilometers of riding. Didn't really seem to change all that much. Might be a little bit heavier, but it's really, I didn't notice it to be anything out of the ordinary or something to worry about. I did notice though that the jetting really did change as you get higher up into the mountains, obviously. Niagara Falls around here is about 400 to 450 feet above sea level, and that's what I have the bike tuned for. As we traveled through Vermont and New Hampshire, I had the altimeter on my GPS, and we were going everywhere from 350 feet all the way up to 6,000 feet plus on the higher parts of the Mount Washington Trail. And a lot of times we were above 2,000 to 3,000 feet through the rolling foothills. And I could notice sort of a bit of burbling on the top end of the rev range when we were higher up in the elevations like that. It wasn't terrible, it was manageable. It definitely does point out the difference between the modern fuel injected bikes and carbureted beasts like the DR650. But overall, this bike is built for this kind of a tour. We got on some back roads, some gravel roads, and some highway, and it really highlights the DR650's ability to manage both of those aspects of motorcycle riding. So if you're interested in one of these bikes, I would say it's a good choice for this type of riding. The stock seats, I've mentioned this before, are tolerable for a lot of rides, but after 2,100K in 4 days, I'll tell you right now, I gotta look at some solution for that seat. I had a couple ideas in mind and I want to try playing with them in the future, but for now I'll just keep riding the way it is. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever been to Mount Washington and what your thoughts were, and let everyone else know as well. And by all means, feel free to subscribe and like the video if you found the content of high enough quality. Until next time, I gotta get back in and continue editing. I've still got some footage I've got to render for this particular video, but I hope to see you soon stopping by here at Dino's Tinker Shed. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.